All right, hey everybody, this is Rosh, and you are watching Helix Basics. So this is a YouTube tutorial series I'm putting together to help new and experienced users program their Line 6 Helix. So a little about myself. Once again, my name is Rosh, and I build and program a lot of guitar rigs out here in LA as well as online. Some of my clients include Steve Vai, Leppard, Melissa Etheridge, A Perfect Circle, Bush, Dweezil Zappa, Kylie Minogue, Maroon 5, and more. So I wanted to give back to the Helix community and show some tips and tricks on how to program their Line 6 Helix Floor. If you've been watching this YouTube channel, you've seen a lot of fractal audio content. And one of the things a lot of people don't know about me is that I also program the Line 6 Helix Floor, as well as the other modelers out there on the market, like the Quad Cortex and the Kemper. So there's a lot of crossover content. There's a lot of best practices no matter what modeler you use. And I wanted to give back to the community out there and show some tips and tricks on how to get the best tone live in the studio, on tour, on stage, wherever else you may find yourself. So this video is going to be dealing with the related video previously that is using dual cabinets, coming up with a high gain sound. And again, we're using dual cabinets to do that, but this time we're just going to do this on HX Edit rather than on the front panel. So right here, we're presented with a blank preset. Of course, you can find them in your user set lists. And so what we want to do, of course, is we're going to be using an amplifier and a cabinet separately rather than using the amp plus cab block. Now, this particular tutorial, we're not going to be doing like a metal kind of tone. We're going to be doing something high gain. Maybe if you're like in a cover band, you're playing a lot of like 80s hard rock, 90s hard rock, early 2000s hard rock. For me, when I try to come up with a high gain sound, it's something that I can, play a lot of that like 2000s hard rock thing, or maybe, like if you're in a cover band, maybe you're playing Paramore or something, or maybe you're playing, a lot of that aughts, high gain, heavy rock kind of thing. So the first thing that we're going to do is, of course, we're going to add an amplifier, and there's a lot of choices to choose from in the Helix. There's plenty that are great. So one of the ones that I do like is the Placator Dirty. This is the, Friedman BE. You can, of course, use some of these other ones like the German Ubersonic. You can use the PV Panama. You can use some of the Rev amps, etc. So there's plenty to choose from. But for this tutorial, we'll just use the Placator Dirty. Again, the Dave Friedman BE 100. And the cool thing is it also has the HBE mode. So there's a lot of toggle switches to get, different tones out of this. Now, obviously, if we only have the camp but no cabinet, it's going to sound really bad. So the second thing we want to do is add a cabinet here. And instead of using a single cabinet, we're going to go to the dual cabinet in the drop-down menu. Now, for high gain stuff, again, most of the high gain stuff that you're going to hear on records is generally going to be a cabinet using V30 type speakers. Greenbacks are just a little too dark. They're a little bit more of that classic rock sound. But I mean, yes, of course, you can get, good high gain tones using greenbacks. Obviously, Eddie Van Halen is a great example of somebody who uses like greenback style speakers and gets a lot of gain on his amps. But for that modern high gain kind of thing, V30s generally seem to be great. So let's go with the Uber V30. This is the Bogner cabinet. I'm not sure if it's a Shiva cabinet, but just the Bogner cabinet with V30s in it. Now, what we, of course, want to do is make sure that the cabinets match. And of course, you can use two different cabinets if you'd like, but for a lot of these dual cabinet kind of presets that I build, I try to use the same cabinet in both, but I just use two different microphones. Common pairing, of course, is using a ribbon mic. So we're going to select a ribbon mic for this right-hand speaker. And then for this speaker, we're going to select a dynamic microphone. And a dynamic microphone generally provides a lot of that mid-range punch. It's going to help your tone cut through the mix. It's like a lot of detail, a lot of that mid-rangey, it's kind of that brash, nasally thing. And again, for high gain tones, it'll help you cut through the mix. And then the ribbon mic is going to provide a lot of that low end. It's going to fill out the tone a lot better. It's going to provide a lot of that smooth top end. And the microphones are generally pretty dark. But again, pairing these is like peanut butter and jelly. They fill out a lot of the guitar tone that works great in the mix. And again, we're going to be using this microphone to just kind of fill out the sound. So the first thing that we want to do is in the second microphone, we're going to just bring that down to 0 so we can dial in the 57 first. And again, in my opinion, and no matter what modeler you use, the cabinet block is always the key to getting a good guitar tone. You'll notice in many of my other videos, I spend very little time in the actual amp block. I'm doing most of the heavy lifting through the cabinet block. So the 57 dynamic is, of course, the ubiquitous Shure SM57. Probably one of the most recorded microphones out there. So most guitar tones that you'll hear on a record are generally going to be a 57. So Most times I recommend that users start at the cap edge, and then we're going to do some standard low and high cuts here. So 80 and 8,000. And again, if you need to go brighter or darker, you can, of course, bring this down to 5,000 to 8,000. That's generally a good range to do the high cut, and 80 to 100 hertz, depending on how much low end you need. And let's just kind of listen to what the guitar tone is at this point. I mean, that's pretty great already, and we haven't even had to mess with the amp block that much. So I definitely want a little bit more gain, a little bit more low end. And with the Dave Friedman or the Placator, you have all these like toggle switches here. So one thing that we can also do is, let's bring up the presence just a hair. Let's check out what we're doing with here. Now, if you need more gain than that, obviously turning on the HBE mode will give you a lot more, as opposed to this. So you can hear that, some of the upper mid-range is we're kind of losing some of the upper mid-range as we turn on the switch. Again, for the time being, I think this is plenty of gain for what I would need. Again, I'm not dialing in a metal tone. This is more like a hard rock thing. And, the cabinet, just as it's dialed in right here, sounds pretty good. I would actually go a little bit brighter. And again, if this sounds a lot really bright and thin, remember we are going to be using this microphone to kind of round out the tone. Okay, so let's move that even closer to the center. Again, I want this microphone to do a lot of the heavy cutting through the mix, that kind of thing. Great. So right there, we're already close to the center. That's going to be, as the closer you move to the center, the brighter the tone's going to be, and the further you move out, the darker the tone's going to be. And again, you'll notice we're not really doing much in the amp block itself. I just added a little bit more gain, a little bit more bass. We could probably add some mids too. So let's see what that sounds like. Yeah. And one thing that I like to do when I'm dialing in an amp is sometimes I will actually just turn the knobs to their extremes just to hear what they're doing. So if the mids are on 10, this is what it would sound like. And if we take away the mids, let's hear what that sounds like. So you can hear right away, this is a very powerful, slider. And again, if you're listening at home, I'm using a Les Paul. This is the bridge pickup, knobs wide open. Yeah, I'm actually digging that tone. And again, if it sounds very mid-rangey now, remember, we are going to be using the ribbon mic to fill out the rest of the tone. So let's click here. We're going to go to this ribbon mic and again, do some standard low and high cuts, 80 and 8,000. I do go as low as 5,000 sometimes, depending on the type of guitar tone I want and, the type of context that I'm playing in. But again, if I was the only guitar player in a live situation, you can definitely take up more of the sonic mix if you'd like. Above 8,000 is a lot of information that just generally doesn't need to be in a guitar tone. That's going to compete with the cymbals, the vocals, a lot of the high end. It's going to give you a lot of shrill high end. So if you're soloing high up on the neck, you're going to get a lot of that, nasty pick attack that just kind of grates against your ears. So I find that 8,000 is a good starting point, and you can go to 5,000 if you need the tone to be darker. Again, we'll move this to the cap edge, and then what we're going to do is use this level slider to blend in the low end and the fullness, and let's see what we're dealing with now. So right around there, you can really hear that the low end just starts kind of, really getting more prominent. So that's a low E. If I take away, see the low end becomes super anemic there. So let's add some more low end, especially for you high gain players. If you really love to feel your palm mutes and everything like that, the ribbon mic's going to be the thing that does the heavy lifting. Yeah, that's a pretty rich guitar tone now. And again, you hear that the 57 is really providing a lot of the tone that's going to cut through, but the ribbon mic is what's, the Royer 121 is really what adds the fullness to the guitar tone. So if we, of course, take away the 57, you'll hear it just becomes like this dark, muddy mess. Okay, so again, really think in the context of like a live situation. You want the 57 to really do most of the heavy lifting, and then the ribbon mic is just there to kind of fill out the rest of what's missing. And again, if the tone's too bright, you know, you can of course move the microphone out. Or if you need it to be brighter, you can move the microphone in. I found the cap edge was actually pretty great. Now, of course, as you're hearing this, you're hearing me roll my volume up and down. Let's address the hiss, and the hiss is really just coming because it's, you know, a high gain amp. So of course, by default on every preset, the input gate is off. So let's just turn it on, and the hiss basically goes away at default settings, and you still have this. Now, the decay is at 500 milliseconds, so what you hear is that the hiss is going to be a little bit there because you can hear the gate kind of closing slowly. So if you need that hiss to go away much quicker, you can, of course, bring the decay down. So you hear that. So now the hiss isn't going to be going as long. And you're not going to have any weird gate crackling or anything like that. You know, the gate is still functioning very normally. It just kind of has, you know, it sounds very natural on the guitar. And again, here's my pickups wide open. As you can hear, there's no hiss. You can kind of hear my hand, you know, kind of gliding along the strings. But in general, that sounds really great. And last but not least, of course, let's add a reverb. And, you know, we'll use the dynamic hall. Let's go to maybe 1 second, and then let's bring the mix down. Again, by default settings, I just, you know, don't need that much reverb, and then we'll go from here. So right here, very simple, easy to dial in, use a high gain sound using just, you know, a dual cabinet. Again, I find that when using dual cabinets, it's way easier to dial in a tone than just using one cabinet, because I find that a lot of microphones just don't have all the information that we need for a nice, full, rich guitar tone. And instead, pairing two different microphones on the same cabinet gives you a lot more of that sonic spectrum. And then the cool thing is by moving them around, doing some low and high cuts, we can, you know, basically give all the good frequencies that we want for the guitar tone and then subtract all the frequencies we don't. So here, this is going to be a good place to wrap it up for this video. Really simple. Again, a nice high gain tone. There's plenty of different speakers and plenty of different amps to choose from. But yeah, I find if you want something that's just going to, you know, get you there pretty quickly, can't go wrong with the Friedman Placator Dirty. So thanks so much for watching. If you guys need any one-on-one help dialing in your Helix or any other modeler out there, would be happy to help you out. Feel free to contact me directly, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
I'm falling with you. I'm standing with you.